Hi friends, hello, hi, how are you? I hope you guys are having an amazing day today. Hello and welcome to the channel. Today's candle of the day, Peach Bellini. She's peachy, she's Bellini-y, she's everything. And today's video, we are going to be covering a topic that I've reviewed a lot of like social media reality TV shows just because I think they're really interesting to watch and also review. I've done like Nikita Dragons, Nikki and Gabby, Tana Mongeau. Like I really enjoy reality TV shows centered around content creators. I don't enjoy watching them. I enjoy talking about them because I think that there's a lot there. There's a lot to talk about. However, if you had told me in like 2020 that I would have been watching a reality TV show about TikTokers, I don't know that I would have believed you. So I'm a little surprised to be doing today's video. However, I have a lot to say about the brand new Hype House Netflix show that came out last week. So if you don't want to watch the Hype House show, but you still want to know what it's about and what happened, this video is for you because I watched it so you don't have to. Let's jump into it. So in April of 2021, it was announced that the members of the Hype House were going to be getting their own Netflix show. And first of all, I just want to take a couple of minutes in this video to fully explain what the Hype House is and what a content house is to begin with, because I think that understanding both of those concepts is really important to understanding this show in any capacity. And while the show kind of explains it, they don't explain it very well. So I'm going to timestamp this video. If you already know what like a content house is and the Hype House is, you don't really need to listen to this part. Premise of a content house, basically a bunch of creators living and working together in the hopes of constantly cross-promoting on each other's platforms and in turn gaining more popularity, which would then make them more famous, which would then get them more money. So the whole point of content houses is to just sort of build off of each other's fame and success in order for everyone involved to make more money. I would argue one of the most famous content houses and also one of the first content houses was the Team 10 house, which has been just absolutely shrouded in controversy since it first started. Team 10 was created by YouTuber Jake Paul, and basically he started this by bringing together a bunch of up-and-coming creators on YouTube together, put them all in one house, and catapulted them into stardom in the YouTuber world. However, over the years, I think that this concept of a content house, especially the way that Jake Paul did it, has now been deemed incredibly problematic and predatory for a lot of reasons. For example, just using Team 10 as like the example, there's obviously been a lot of other content houses and there were before Team 10, but I think Team 10 is a good example to show kind of how problematic content houses can be. People in the Team 10 house didn't have to pay any rent to live there. They got to live there for free. However, they had to follow a lot of very strict rules that Jake Paul had put into place. They had to wake up at a certain time, or they had to pay a fine. They couldn't have friends over without it getting approved. They couldn't drink and like go party. Just like a lot of very strict rules in order to not have to pay rent and like become internet famous. And the other problem with being in these content houses is that you're kind of forced to partake in the content that other people put out. So especially in the case of Team 10 and Jake Paul, that became incredibly problematic when Team 10 members were sort of forced to participate in pranks or bits for his YouTube videos that required them to be put into danger, that were sometimes crossing the line into bullying, that were very mean-spirited or rude. And this has led to a lot of people who were in Team 10 to make videos talking about the mistreatment that they got from being in that house. Now, the other problem with content houses that we've seen is that a lot of times the contracts they have influencers sign can be very predatory. So for example, it was brought to light by the people that were in Team 10 that when you signed your contract to join, you were essentially signing away 10% of all of the money that you made in your social media career for 5 years, which okay, I know that doesn't seem like a long time, but in the terms of social media, that is a crazy long time. That's like the career span of a lot of people in social media is 5 years. The entirety of a person's career, they're paying Jake Paul 10% of that money they're making simply because they stayed at his home for like a few months when they were first starting out and he helped them grow a fan base. So not only is that just like the time frame is crazy, but additionally, the problem with signing on to give someone 10% of your income for an indefinite amount of time as a social media influencer producer is that when you sign on to these content houses, you might be making like $50,000 a year, right? But in the span of 2 months, because of the way social media is and because it's so undetermined if you're going to blow up or not, you could go from making $50,000 a year to like $5 million a month. And then 10% of that has to keep going to the same people that signed you. Actually, a really interesting lawsuit that happened between another content house called the FaZe Clan, where this Twitch streamer named Tfue, that's a tongue twister, basically sued the FaZe Clan for what he called an oppressive contract because he signed with them and then pretty immediately blew up and got super famous and was making all this money. And they were still asking and entitled to that money, even though he was making way more because he had signed with them when he was making way less. That's why I always say, just as a general rule for social media, you should literally never sign contracts like that when you're a small creator. I always have found that things like MCNs, which are basically management companies that take a percentage of your entire revenue from your YouTube channel, I've always said that those seem incredibly predatory and problematic because you never know, like you could sign with them when you have 5,000 subscribers and you're making like a couple $100 a month. And then in the span of like 3 months, through no help from them, you could blow up to like 100,000 subscribers and now you're making substantially more and they're still allowed to take that same cut even if they had no role in helping you blow up. Now, besides all of the sort of legal and ethical issues with content houses, just on top of that, there's always a absolute astronomical fuck ton of drama that comes from these content houses. Everybody's always exposing one another, videos about why they left, talking poorly about the people who run the content houses or other people in them. There's always cheating allegations. There's always all of this just crazy drama that goes along with content houses. Basically, you could not pay me to live in a house like this. And I don't think you could pay most, especially adults, money to live in homes like this. That sounds absolutely insane. But anyway, that's what a content house is. But what specifically is the Hype House? Basically, the Hype House is the TikTok version of Team 10 or the FaZe Clan. It was essentially TikTokers following in the footsteps of YouTubers, which when I saw all of this happening back in 2020, I was super curious to see how it would go. I was wondering if history would repeat itself, like Team 10 kind of fizzled out because people left, there was too much drama. I wondered if it would repeat itself with the Hype House or if this would be sort of a different enough concept that it wouldn't. However, it seems like it did. So in December of 2019, the Hype House was created. It was founded by 4 creators named Lil Huddy, or Chase on YouTube and TikTok, Alex Warren, Thomas Petru, and Daisy Keech. Also in the Hype House, they had some of the top TikTok creators. Like they had Charli D'Amelio, Dixie D'Amelio, Addison Rae, Avani. All of these people who already had very established careers on TikTok joined the Hype House at the same time that a bunch of people who didn't really have those established careers joined. Now, originally when the Hype House was created, I would say that major criticisms I saw were people mostly saying that it really lacked diversity, because it did. Now, kind of similar to Team 10, although I wouldn't say that Team 10 actually was successful in launching many careers other than, say, like Alyssa Violet. I feel like she's still doing really well in her own right, but I feel like most of the people who were in Team 10 are not like social media celebrities in their own right anymore. However, as people from the Hype House started getting more and more famous and more popular on TikTok and YouTube, a lot of them ended up leaving the Hype House pretty early on. Also, similarly to YouTube content houses, there was a ton of drama. You had a bunch of why I left the Hype House videos, which was like super reminiscent of YouTube in 2016 when everyone was leaving Team 10. You had drama between the people who founded the house, most notably Daisy Keech made a video talking about Thomas and Chase and Alex kind of screwing her over. So that was a whole drama. So there's already been a lot of drama surrounding the house. And also the main reason that people even knew about the house in the first place and liked watching the content was because of people like Charli and Dixie D'Amelio and Addison Rae. And once those people left, the sort of hype for the Hype House started to die down. So by the time the show was announced in 2021, a lot of people had already sort of lost interest in the concept of this house to begin with, because none of the big TikTokers that drew people in the first place were even there. And honestly, when the show was announced, there was already a lot of initial criticism. I would say the biggest criticism I saw was that a lot of people were annoyed or whatever that TikTokers were getting a reality TV show on a place like Netflix. I think the biggest criticism YouTubers and social media people are always going to face is that people just don't think they are the same caliber of celebrity as like a normal celebrity, and that they don't deserve to be on mainstream platforms like Netflix. They should kind of just stay in their own lane and stay on like TikTok or YouTube or Snapchat, something like that. I almost argue that I disagree with that. I mean, if you count even the people that were just on this show, they had hundreds of millions of followers all combined. So I don't think it's fair to say that they don't have enough like influence or celebrity to be on a show like this. I'm always gonna say that I think creators should be treated more like mainstream celebrities. I think that they are in their own right. Is it like a little bit different? Yeah, because if you're thinking about somebody like Taylor Swift, most people in the world know who she is, whereas like definitely YouTube is a lot more niche. Instead of looking at them like A-list celebrities, I more look at them like D-list celebrities, which is basically the people who get reality TV shows. So I didn't think that this was that crazy or weird that they got the show in the first place. However, I understand why other people did think it was weird. Another reason I saw a lot of people upset was the inclusion of Nikita Dragun in the show, who is a very controversial, problematic YouTuber. And I also was confused by that because I didn't know that she was in the Hype House. Turns out she's not. She's just like there the whole season. So I still don't know why she was included in this project, but that was definitely an initial criticism that I agreed with. And another issue I think that's really important to talk about before we sort of dive into the show, because it adds some context to stuff, is that there is a TikToker named Sienna May who blew up like basically overnight on TikTok for being really body positive, like pretty much immediately blew up. And she was in the Hype House along with a guy that she was sort of seeing but not seeing. They had like a very social media relationship and that fans really gravitated to and liked. Both of them got a lot of hype and attention from this fake relationship, and his twin brother actually came out stating that Sienna had him while he was too drunk to consent at a party, and there was video evidence of it. Sienna has adamantly denied these claims. However, I don't believe her. I believe the victim. That's pretty much always the side that I fall on, number one. Number two, I don't agree with the way that she talked about things. I could make a whole video on this situation. I don't know if I will. I feel weird about it because I think that a lot of people tend to give her a pass, even though there is like video proof of her doing these things. Also, the videos that she made defending herself just came across as very victim blamey and sort of implying that if you have consent one time to do something, that means you just have consent consistently in a relationship, which is absolutely not correct. So she was actually supposed to be in this show, Sienna May. And then shortly after they launched the promo pictures for the show, all of this stuff came out about her this person, and so she was cut from pretty much the entire show. Like I think there's a couple of scenes where you can see her in the background, or there's a couple of scenes where you can see her in a TikTok or something like that, but she really, like, Netflix did a great job editing her out completely. They didn't fuck around with this. They just took her out of the show entirely, which personally I think was the best decision that they could have made, and I'm happy they made that decision to do that because I don't think she deserved to be on a show like this or have a platform like this, especially with all of these allegations about her. However, a lot of the cast members have come forward since the show aired, saying that because Sienna's parts were cut so intensely, it led to some conversations and some things being taken out of context. So I will talk about when we get to those points where people say absence made a difference. But I just felt like that was important to note too, was there's already some sort of controversies around the show because of Sienna's involvement and then lack of involvement. So now that we've gotten all of that background information out of the way, let's jump into an episode by episode breakdown. Also, I apologize in advance if there's not a ton of clips being overlaid in this video. Netflix is one of those companies that's really intense about copyright strikes, and also it's really hard to just get the footage in the first place because you can't screen record on the app. So I apologize if there's a lack of footage, but I will provide pictures as best I can, screenshots, things like that. So episode 1 is basically the sort of get to know you episode of the show, and that leads into my first criticism of the show, which is that there's frankly just too many fucking people involved. I feel like with reality shows, you don't want more than like 5 or 6 different people or even couples to sort of follow along with. I think once you get past 6, it just gets really overwhelming because there's so many different storylines, so many different people, and while they definitely had a more main cast of people, it was basically the people with a bigger social media following. While they had those people, there were so many side characters that had sort of side plots that I think I was supposed to be invested in, but I simply wasn't because I didn't know their names or who they were or anything about them. But regardless, the first few minutes of the show is basically just a montage showing kind of how crazy life at the Hype House is. It's described as 10, 20-year-old millionaires with millions of followers living fraternity style and making content all day long. And I don't know about you, but that sounds like the first circle of hell. Like, oh my God. I think it was supposed to be edited to make the audience be like, wow, that's so cool. And all I could think about was how just absolutely terrible that sounded. Now, the first kind of character we meet is Thomas, sort of the self-described leader of the Hype House. This was the very first interesting thing that happened in the show, and it was kind of right off the bat, was that Thomas makes it very clear that he does not take a percentage from anyone for anything. So basically how the Hype House works is they have a sponsor, their literal sponsors, Bang Energy Drinks, and they make like $80,000 a month for posting 6 TikToks a month for Bang Energy, which pays for their house. And that's how the Hype House works. Like, that's the business, is just posting sponsorships for Bang Energy and having it pay your bills. That's crazy. So right off the bat, he makes it very clear that he doesn't take a percentage, which I approve of. I always think that's great. Doesn't seem as predatory as stuff like Team 10. However, that does make me confused about what the actual business of the Hype House is, because Thomas talks a lot about it. Like, he's like, oh, I want this business to succeed. I want it to be successful. And like, I get that, but I think I was just confused about what the business actually was. Like, is the business solely just posting Bang Energy sponsorships and making money to live in this house? Is that the business? What monetary gain are you getting out of this other than just doing Bang Energy sponsorships and like having them pay for the home that you live in? Like, I think I was just really confused by that. Like, what is the business of the Hype House? But anyway, also the other sort of nutty thing that he said in the very beginning of the show, the Hype House has made the careers of people like Charli and Dixie D'Amelio and Addison Rae, which is just literally not true. Like, I'm pretty sure when the Hype House started, Charli D'Amelio already had well over 25 million followers on TikTok. Same with Addison and Dixie. They were both very famous on TikTok in their own right. So I just found it really weird for him to say that they were made by the Hype House, when in reality, the presence of them sort of made the Hype House in the first place. Like, had those people never been involved with the account in the first place, I don't think anyone would have given a singular shit about the formation of this content house. So I just thought that was interesting that he tried to like low-key take credit for blowing them up, which is just not factual or true. Sort of get into our second plot point, which this becomes a reoccurring plot over the entire season, but there's definitely each episode they sort of pick one of the characters to be like the villain. And for the first episode, it was Chase, or Little Huddy, who was 18 years old at the time of filming this. First episode sort of covers why there's a bunch of people living in a bunch of different houses. I was sort of confused when I heard about this, because I was under the impression that the whole point of the Hype House was just that they all lived in one house together, but I guess there's like multiple different versions of the Hype House, and Chase lives and sort of runs one of them. He moved out kind of unexpectedly, I guess, according to some of the other cast members, and now lives on his own. However, he's still a part of the Hype House. I guess Thomas still pays for the house that he's currently living in because Chase does Bang Energy sponsorships. I don't know. If you were watching this show having no idea what social media was, good fucking luck. Even for me, it was hard to keep up with it. I was like, wait, who was supposed to post a Bang Energy sponsorship? Like, basically the main conflict of this show between Thomas and Chase is that Chase has not been upholding his end of the deal in posting sponsorships and helping out, which means a lot of the sort of responsibility of running the house has fallen onto Thomas, which he does not appreciate. I think the really shocking thing to me about this show is just how young a lot of these people are. Like, Chase is literally 18 years old. Pressure of this entire business is being put on his shoulders, which is just absolutely nutty to me. I think the oldest person in the show is Nikita Dragun, who is 25, which still seems like shockingly young to me. Like, these are very, very young people that are on this show. It's crazy that they're trying to villainize him for not being a good business partner when he's like 18 years old. I don't really know what everyone expected from him, but like, okay. We got to see a little bit of background on Chase, how he sort of rose to fame on social media, talked about not really fitting in a ton in school, switching to online school, and really throwing himself into the social media game. And it kind of gave him a place where he felt like he could be himself and he belonged, which I think is wonderful. He also talks about how he's sort of getting away from TikTok now and venturing much more into his music, which I actually have to say, this is a side note, but I've listened to Chase's music before. It's actually not bad, like truly. I don't think it's, you know, it's not my vibe. I wouldn't bop to, you know, 21st Century Vampire on my way to Starbucks. It's not bad. It's a unique sound. The music's well produced. It's like pretty good singing. His music videos are cool. Like, I actually like his vibe. I feel like he's doing something different. He's not just trying to be like a generic pop star. He's doing what's obviously very on brand and authentic for him. So I can always appreciate that. A lot of the first episode talks about his sort of shift into the music career. And honestly, I think, and I don't know if this is a correct assumption, so if you've watched the show, let me know, but I think what I get from a lot of the conversations, especially around Chase, is just a lot of jealousy. Like, it seems like a lot of the other members of the Hype House are just kind of jealous of the fact that he has been able to be so successful with music, and a lot of them like are still doing TikTok. Like, that's the vibe I get, is there's a lot of jealousy and ego at play inside of this house. I will say that this conflict between Chase and Thomas was a little bit weird to me, and also the way that Thomas low-key like put down other people who had left the Hype House before felt a little bit just strange to me, that he was expecting undying loyalty from these like 18 and 19-year-olds. Sometimes like Charli D'Amelio was like 16 and she left. It's like expecting undying loyalty from these people because they were a part of something that maybe gave them a bit of a boost in their career. The whole point of a career though is it's like a career path. Not like you're on one trajectory and then you stay there forever. Most of these people are still under 20 years old and trying to figure out what they want to do in life. You can't really hold them to a standard of like needing to stay in one place forever just because it's what you want them to do and what's going to benefit you the most. Now we also get introduced to another main character of the show named Vinnie Hacker. I'd heard the name Vinnie Hacker before this, but I had no idea like who he was. I guess he's another 18-year-old, which again, oh my God, so young. Another 18-year-old who blew up on TikTok doing thirst traps. Where he just like danced with his shirt off. That's literally how he blew up. He has like 12 million followers on TikTok. And also he's now switched over to Twitch streaming and YouTube videos. And I would say Vinnie is probably one of the most popular people in the Hype House, especially at the time of filming this and even right now. He's one of the more successful, popular people. And I actually liked Vinnie. I think I can not relate. Obviously, I have no idea what that's like, but I can sympathize with the fact that at 18 years old, he wasn't really expecting to have this massive following. It sort of happened to him instead of him actively working to make it happen. So now that he's in the position, he doesn't want to like blow the opportunity, but he also, you can tell, doesn't really like being on social media, doesn't like the pressure, doesn't like people thirsting after him, like is very uncomfortable by all of that. So I thought his story was really interesting in the show. And then we also meet Nikita in the context of the show, who obviously I knew the most about her. She talks about her beauty brand a lot and how she kind of got to where she was. And also, it's never really talked about why she's always at the Hype House, other than she's just like friends with everybody. I'll tell you what I think happened. I think that when Netflix signed on to do this show, they thought someone like Charli and Dixie D'Amelio or Addison Rae were gonna be on the show. And then when those people left, they didn't really have a ton of other big name social media people on the cast list. So I think they were like, hey, who do you guys know that's super famous and can bring some spice to the show? And they were like, oh, Nikita Dragun. She's so problematic that I think they knew she would bring in sort of clicks and views. So they just kind of threw Nikita in there, despite the fact that she's literally just like their friend. That's like, she's not even in the Hype House. But anyway, so I will say that I watched Nikita's Snapchat show and I reviewed it on this channel, and she definitely comes across very differently in that show than she does in this one. I think one reason for that is that she's not on the show as much as she was for obviously her main show. And the other reason is that because she's older than the other cast members, I think that it's easier for her to look a little bit more mature. She's 25 and she's on a show with a bunch of like 18-year-olds. So I think that's a big reason for it. However, I think as the show progresses, which we'll get into it, it's very clear that Nikita has not really changed at all and still just like does not give a shit about all of the actively problematic things that she does. So then we transfer to the other main characters, who are named Alex Warren and Cover. Alex Warren is a huge YouTuber and his girlfriend Cover is also a big YouTuber and TikToker. I will say these two people were my absolute favorite on the show. I feel like they were the only two that were actually like real and honest about things, and they just seem to have really great on-camera chemistry, a good on-camera relationship, everything like that. Even though they had some fights and some problems throughout the show, I think even just off the bat meeting them, it was really interesting to hear about their backstory. Both of them were homeless when they started social media. They were living out of a car, and they've grown into this, like, obviously they're living in a $1 million mansion now. I will say I think Alex is one of the hardest working people on the show as far as content creation goes. You can tell that he puts a lot of love and thought into his content, and that he actually cares about what he's putting out instead of doing a lot of stuff that's more low effort. And then we also meet the other main character. I'm telling you, there's way too many characters in the show. We meet the other main character whose name is Larray, who is also very popular on TikTok and YouTube. Larray talks a lot about how when he was growing up, he grew up in a lower socioeconomic class and how that was very difficult for him. He talked about having parents who did not accept the fact that he was gay and how he found solace in his grandmother who always accepted and believed in him. And again, I think that between Alex and Larray, they're definitely the most relatable on the show. I think that they went through a lot of things that a lot of people can relate to and understand. And I think seeing people who have gone through those sort of hard times in life is really helpful to their fan base, mostly because they're seeing that now those people are very successful despite going through those things. And it's a good show to especially a lot of their younger audiences that you can go through hard times and still come out on the other end, be a successful, happy person. Now, Larray also discusses this sort of cancel culture, which this comes up later too, but you can tell that he has a real fear of social media kind of one day just vanishing for him and all going away. And I can definitely like see that and relate to that. I can't even imagine the pressure a lot of these young people are under, especially because a lot of them start taking care of their families and start taking care of other people around them. I can imagine the pressure that's on them to continue to succeed is really, really intense. So I can also imagine that the fear of all of that going away would be even more intense, especially if you came from a background where money wasn't always there and you did live in poverty and you lived in unstable circumstances. I can understand why so many of them value in the monetary gain that being a social media influencer gives them. Now, at the end of episode 1, after we sort of meet all of our characters, there is a pool party that happens. And this is when the first sort of confrontation between Chase and Thomas happens. Thomas basically confronts Chase about not posting as much content as he should be and not being as involved in the hype house as he should be. And I'm not gonna lie, the entire conversation, this is one that's repeated multiple times throughout the show. It always basically goes nowhere. And I'm always very unsure about what the point of the conversation was in the first place. And then the episode kind of just ends and there's no real resolution. The only thing we get out of episode 1 is just sort of an introduction to all the people that are going to be on the show. But I think there was too much time spent on that, honestly, number 1. And number 2, we didn't really meet everyone that lives in the hype house. Like, I think it's weird that for a show that is supposed to be based on the hype house, 50% of, I guess you would say, like the main characters don't even live at the house or actively post on the hype house social media. Like, it's just a weird vibe. It's not like a content house, because the people that do live at the house full time, most of them aren't the main characters of the show, and most of them are just sort of side characters that are very difficult to keep up with. So the second episode starts right off the bat with the sort of same drama that was in the first episode. It was basically Thomas and his girlfriend Mia, who is also a TikToker, kind of just talking about Chase moving out, talking about how it was disrespectful, talking about how the way he went about it was bad. And also Thomas talks about how he is currently paying for Chase's rent and how he's not going to do that anymore if Chase isn't going to be a part of the hype house in any capacity. I just want to say I think this is really weird. I feel like this requires a little bit of context, but I mentioned before that one of the previous founders who left the hype house, Daisy Quiche, got in a lot of drama with Thomas, basically because they didn't have a contract. That's what it all boiled down to. Like, there's a lot of back and forth and a lot of drama between the two of them, but what it came down to was there was no contract between the two of them clearly stating who owned what and who did what. And so Thomas is talking about, you know, renting Chase's place for him and paying the rent on his place. And it's like, I don't understand why these people just don't have contracts. Like, why would you not just make it, if you're going to be paying someone's rent under the understanding that they're going to be fulfilling obligations for you, why would you just not have a clear set contract that's like, Chase is going to post X amount of videos, and if he doesn't, then he's in breach of contract, and that's a much easier way to go about things than just all of these like feelings they have. Like, they just really go based on like emotional support instead of actually doing things for the brand, like physically, like brand deals. And I just think that's super weird that even though they call it a business, they don't run this house like a business. It doesn't seem like there's any contracts in place or any sort of real like set guidelines people have to follow. It's kind of just to come stay here and do whatever you want type of situation. And I think this second episode is another main point that gets brought up. I've seen it a lot on social media that it's been brought up, that really a lot of them just shit talk each other. Like, they all really don't like each other based on the way that they talk about each other. The show has these like cameras in the corner of ceilings in room, kind of like Big Brother style security cameras. So some of the shots come from those cameras. And this is where you see that like they don't really like each other that that much because you always catch one of them talking shit about the other person, like on these live feed cameras. So again, you can kind of tell they don't really like each other. After all of this sort of talking poorly about Chase ends, we flash over and we find out a little bit more about his previous relationship with Charli D'Amelio. Now, Chase and Charli dated and then broke up. They had a really public breakup. There was a lot of drama involved in it. There was cheating, scandals, all of this stuff. And here's the thing. A lot of people think that Chase and Charli are dating again. There's this whole conspiracy theory about, I don't care. I literally don't care. I don't care about speculating about the relationship of a 17 and 18-year-old. Can we just take a second to think about the fact that it would be so bizarre if somebody was hyper analyzing our high school relationships? Like, can we just really have a conversation? Because that's what this is. They're high school age. This is a high school relationship that they are in, and hundreds of millions of people are analyzing it. That's fucking weird. Do you think one of the main benefits of them talking about this on the show was just being honest and open about the way that having such a public relationship really hurt them and caused to the downfall of their relationship, which I can imagine? Can't really fathom the amount of stress and pressure that they were both probably under, being watched by that many people and criticized by that many people and even praised by that many people. That just seems like a lot. So I'm glad that they were able to open up about that. The main plot of this episode, the second episode, was that Chase was going to be throwing a dinner party for some of the people in his house and that he didn't invite people from the Hype House. And that was the plot, was that they were mad that he didn't invite them to his house for dinner as like part of this big dinner. At the dinner, the topic of cancellation comes up, and this is when all of the influencers start talking about canceling. I feel like it's pretty much a law that every show that talks about social media influencers has to have an episode or a segment on canceling. Feels like just required at this point in time based on how all of them do it. However, I think Netflix did it in a way that was especially annoying because they try to frame influencers going to parties during, especially the peak of the pandemic before there were vaccines. They try to frame influencers doing that as being canceled. And I just can't stress how annoying that is. Like, these people went to parties during a pandemic and not only did that, but actively posted about it and promoted it during the peak of the pandemic, which was not only illegal, but highly unethical and immoral. And Netflix basically paints it as just like, oh, well, kids were being mean to them and they didn't even really do anything. They were just getting canceled for no reason. Like, there are absolutely situations where people get canceled for no reason. This was not one of them. Every single person at that party absolutely deserved every amount of criticism, if not more criticism, that they got for actively partying during a spike of a pandemic. I feel like when I hear these types of things from YouTubers, like when they talk about cancel culture and things like that, it just shows me that none of them actually care or understand why it happens in the first place. Like, they are so focused on thinking it's just like, well, everyone's mean to me, everyone hates me. They don't even take a second to think about why it's happening in the first place, reflect on the actions that got them to that point. They want all the money and the clout and the fame without being held accountable when that influencing is their job. Regardless of this whole dinner and all the talk about cancel culture, we also see Alex and Cover get into their first on-screen fight. Basically, the fight was just that Cover didn't want Alex to have a desk where he was editing in their bedroom. She wanted separate spaces so that way she wasn't constantly living in a space that was surrounded by like YouTube stuff, and Alex wasn't really seeming to get her point. Here's one thing I will say. I think a lot of younger people watched this show and started giving them shit about this fight. This was like a pretty normal fight, honestly. Like, it didn't seem like anything too crazy. It was just obviously two people who had different fighting styles disagreeing. I think that this theme of not being able to separate YouTube from real life was sort of an overarching theme of the entire season with Cover and Alex. There's another instance of this later on, but they're still sort of struggling with how to keep their relationship separate from all of the YouTube videos and content that they're constantly posting and how to have those boundaries. Like I said before, I think Alex is one of the more hardworking people on this show, but I think that can almost sometimes be a detriment because he doesn't really take time off or take time to disengage from YouTube and numbers and analytics. And he doesn't seem to know the boundaries between what is okay to post as content and what is okay to just like do by yourself alone, just the two of you, you know? I think that this is a struggle that a lot of YouTubers and TikTokers who are in relationships and have joint accounts struggle with. I know I've heard a lot of YouTubers who had very public relationships talk about the fact that it was really hard to know where the boundary lied between what are we vlogging and what are we just existing digesting and experiencing. So I do think that that's sort of a dicey thing that a lot of YouTubers and relationships go through. And it seems like now they've come to a better understanding just based on the way their social media presence is now. But at the time, it seemed like that was still something they were trying to figure out while they were shooting this show, and they were definitely butting heads about it. Now, at the end of episode 2, we find out that Larray tested positive for COVID. This is found out because Nikita gets a call from her manager, where basically Larray's managers are trying to blame Nikita for him going to a party. I just want to say really quick. Nikita was very mad about this. And honestly, I don't know if I fully believe her version of events about what happened, but Nikita was very mad that she thought Larray was blaming her for him coming to this party when he knew he had COVID. And what I will say is, even if that did happen, like even if Nikita knew that he had COVID and was like, hey, come over anyway, I don't necessarily think anyone would really be blaming Nikita too much, because it's not like she was holding, like at the end of the day, she wasn't holding a gun to his head. At the end of the day, he made the choice to go to a party actively knowing that he had COVID. That was his choice. He did that, and nobody can be blamed for those actions other than him. He is the sole person to bear the blame for that. His manager tried to say that Nikita was too drunk, and that's why he had to go pick her up. I'm sorry, you're all 20-year-old millionaires. Like, order an Uber Black. I have no sympathy for anyone who tries to say, well, like, oh, he was just trying to help his friend. Absolutely not. He went to a party knowing that he had COVID, and he exposed other people. And as a result of this, in between episode 2 and 3, the production actually had to shut down for 2 weeks. What I will say is that Larray has since come out and basically completely disputed this plot point. He has said that because Sienna was no longer in the show, Netflix had to sort of spice things up and work around cutting her out. So they made up this story about him going to a party while he had COVID. What he says happened is that he went to pick up Nikita from a party. He did not know that he had COVID, and then the next day found out he had COVID, and when production found out, they spun this sort of narrative. I'm not trying to say that productions and reality shows don't twist things, because they absolutely do. They edit things and twist things all of the time in order to make things more interesting or make things more whatever. We all know that's true. If you watch reality TV, you know that that's the truth. I think the problem I have with this is that a lot of what was said is not stuff that could be organically edited. Like when Nikita was talking about the situation, she literally said, he texted me asking if he could come to the party, and I asked if he had COVID, and he said, no, I took a negative test, and then he showed up. She's literally acknowledging and admitting that like he was coming to this party, he thought he had COVID and he had already had a positive test, and he was coming anyway. So I personally think that this did really happen. I don't believe him. Also, just the way that he talked about it when it was being filmed, the way the other cast members talked about it was just very confusing, because like it does seem like that's exactly what happened. You can't really edit words that much to make this entire situation seem not real, just based on the cast members' own words. And also, even later on, he like apologizes to Nikita about this problem, and he literally says that it was his mistake and he fucked up, and that his manager was just trying to save his ass by lying about his reasoning for going. So he admits to going while having COVID. So I guess it's just like a little bit confusing. I guess I just don't fully believe his version of events, but just so everything is out there, he is claiming that that never happened. So I don't know. So episode 3 starts with a note that says after he tested positive for COVID, the staff and production had to be on pause for 2 weeks. And during that 2-week period, we see the Hype House quarantining via the like Big Brother cameras. I should say we see them poorly quarantining. They're all like hanging out in the same room together. Even though they're not supposed to be in each other's bedrooms, they all still are in each other's bedrooms. So it's like kind of weird. But they also start with a phone call from Larray to Thomas where they're talking about what happened, sort of just talking about everything. And basically the second they hang up with him, everybody in the house just starts shit talking him for going to this party and knowing that he had COVID and going to this party anyway. And I'm not going to defend Larray because he's wrong for that, and I think most people would agree he's wrong for that. I think that's a terrible, disgusting thing to do, knowingly spreading a deadly virus. However, I'm kind of annoyed that the people that shit talked him didn't just say it to his face. I feel like this is an appropriate time to like hold your friends accountable and tell them like, hey, that was really messed up. You should not have done that. There was no reason for you to do that. And instead they all on the phone were like, oh, we love you, feel better. And then the second he hangs up, that's when they start talking about it. Like it just sat super weird with me, but Anyway, everyone just talks behind each other's backs the entire show. That's like the overlying theme. They all just talk about each other. After the quarantine is over, a bunch of the Hype House members go vintage shopping. This is when Larray discusses his problem with Nikita and how Nikita is ghosting him and not speaking to him, which we as the audience know is because she thinks he tried to blame her for the COVID thing. However, he's claiming he doesn't know that and he doesn't know why she's ghosting him. She's not even mad at him for going to a party while actively having COVID. Nobody's mad at him about that. They're all mad about the way that it could have ramifications back on them. So honestly, to this entire confrontation, drama, bullshit, I don't feel bad for literally anyone. They all suck. They're all actively partying during the pandemic on Netflix. Like they're literally being filmed doing it, catching COVID and actively spreading it, not really giving a shit that their friend did something this terrible. And they're just all like, well, but what if it messes up my bag? Or what if it messes up my money? Or what if I get canceled as a result of this? Why is nobody worried about the fact that he could have passed it to somebody and somebody could have fucking died? Like, why are you all, they all seem so out of touch. They have such, I know I've ranted about this a million times, but I feel like this is just like, the show was such a slap in the face because it's just like, as a social media influencer, and you can do that job at home. You don't have to be leaving your house. You don't have to be going to parties. You don't have to be doing all of this stuff. You're choosing to do all of these things when you have one of the easiest jobs in the world during a pandemic, which is to stay the fuck home. You're in a blessed and privileged position that you can stay the fuck home. And instead you're all going to parties and passing COVID to one another. And when you get caught doing that, your first thought isn't like, oh fuck, I hope my negligence and my idiocy doesn't kill someone. Your first thought is like, oh fuck, hope I don't get canceled. What the fuck? So then they all have like a house meeting. Thomas calls a house meeting where they're gonna talk about Hype House stuff. And let me just say this right off the bat. This is where we learned that they only have to post 6 Bang Energy sponsorships a month and their entire house is paid for. Do you know how insane that is? Do you know how they have to make 6 15-second videos, not even talking about Bang Energy, just having the drink in the background or like holding the drink. 6 of those and their $1 million mansion is paid for. That is fucking wild. Anyway, basically in this meeting, they talk about how nobody does any work except for Alex, which again, I'm so confused by the lack of contractual obligations. It blows my mind. Thomas like literally gets so mad at all of these people for like not helping and not doing their work and like not being a part of this or pulling their own weight. Contractually obligate them to do so or they have to move out. Like his management style is so confusing to me. He wants to be like a big brother and mentor to all of these people, but he also gets really mad at them when they don't act like his employees. You can't really have it both ways. Like you can be friendly with people and you can still have a good relationship. They're not doing the job that got them there in the first place. They're not doing the job and they can't stay there. This whole conflict was so confusing to me because it's so easy. You either post the content you're supposed to post to live there, which by the way is such a good deal. Like I don't even think all of these kids realize how out of touch they seem when they can't even post 6 15-second videos a month in order to live somewhere for free. I don't think they realize how just like how insane that is. And honestly, I think this is a big problem with social media influencers, especially really young ones that live in LA in general, is that because a lot of them haven't worked real jobs, a lot of them don't understand how lucky they are and how much money they got for doing very little. And so they take it for granted and just expect that the money is always going to be there and that they can just kick back and like live the influencer lifestyle without doing any work. And I think that's precisely what happened in the Hype House. Like they just want all the perks of being an influencer without having to do any of the work that is required, like posting sponsorship videos so you can have money to live in your home. And honestly, I think the blame for a lot of this conflict does fall on those people for not doing what they're supposed to do, but it also low-key falls on Thomas because he's claiming he wants to be sort of the leader of the Hype House and he secures all these brand deals. People need to sign contracts saying they're gonna fulfill those obligations. You can't just let people live there and not work. It's just so bonkers to me how poorly run and poorly managed the whole thing is. There's also a dodgeball game in this episode. For like seemingly no reason. I think Nikita basically says that she wants to have a dodgeball game where everyone can just like throw stuff at each other to get their anger out about the 2 separate houses being separated. I don't know. But regardless, this dodgeball game is the perfect setting for Nikita and Larray to have their confrontation and talk about everything. They basically come to the agreement that he should not have blamed her and she should not have ghosted him, and they apologize and say they're sorry, and then they move on. And that's the end of that conflict for episode 3. Now, Episode 4 and 5 sort of blurred together in my brain. These were long episodes, by the way. I really wish they had done 30-minute episodes. I have no idea why they did 45-minute ones. There's so much in every single episode, yet so little. It's very jarring. So episode 4 starts with Nikita talking to her mom on the phone about a Twitter beef that she is having with Trisha Paytas. I remember when this Twitter fight happened. I didn't care then. I don't care now. That's it. Now in this episode, Alex announces that because views have been low on his channel, him and Cover are going to be having a fake wedding that they can film for content. This obviously upsets Cover because she really wants to get married and she wants to have this life with Alex, and he is not really ready to get married or ready to settle down in that sense yet. So this causes a good amount of conflict between them. She agrees to do the wedding, but she's obviously very unhappy about it. And a lot of other people point out that she's unhappy about it. I think she's 100% justified. I would also be pissed if like my boyfriend of 3 years wanted to have a fake wedding and then like didn't see my side when I said I wanted to have a real one instead. I'd also be just kind of annoyed if somebody was just trying to use me for views, like using something that you take really seriously, like a wedding, for views. Like I think she was very justified in that. I think that this episode was just kind of weird and cringy to watch because it was obvious that Cover was really upset and unhappy about all of it, and all of the other Hype House members were just like playing into it and like didn't care at all about what they were trying to do. Larray visited his grandmother, which I loved. I thought that was a really sweet part of the episode. We got to see kind of where he grew up. We heard more about his background story. His grandmother seems incredible. I loved all the parts where they kind of brought in their family. It's really easy to forget that social media influencers have family units behind them and people that care about and love them, because you never really see that side to them. You don't ever really see the family side. I really enjoyed that we got to see that side to him and that side to his grandma. After that very sweet moment, we jump right back into the petty drama, which is that one of the Hype House people, I literally cannot remember his name. I'm so sorry. I don't remember his name, but one of the Hype House members, the side characters, shit talked Vinny, the gamer kid, at a dinner. And Vinny confronts him. I think honestly the person I feel the worst for in this show is Vinny. He's 18 years old and he's living with all of these people who are very obviously very jealous of him and sort of the success that he's had, because he's kind of the it person on TikTok and Twitch at the moment, especially when this was being filmed. So I feel like a lot of the other people in the house had some animosity towards him for being so popular and doing his own thing and making his own money instead of putting time into the Hype House brand, which like none of them were doing either, but I think they're just annoyed by him in general because of how successful he is. I feel bad for him. I can't imagine being 18 and living with that much ego surrounding you and being so famous so quickly and like not really knowing what you're doing in life yet. Like that would just be so intimidating to me. Vinny has a lot of angry outbursts during the show, and honestly, I can't blame it. He's an 18-year-old kid who's being forced into this very surreal and crazy world. Like, I don't think he's wrong for that reaction that he has sometimes, which is that he reacts in anger. Now, the bulk of episode 4 is centered around this fake wedding, but we also sort of get a segue into episode 5 with a confrontation that happens between Larray and Nikita. Basically, Larray talks about how Nikita has been accused of blackfishing a lot, and how as a person who is part of the Black community, he finds it very offensive and also wants to use his voice to speak up for other people that are offended by this blackfishing. He acknowledges that she does it actively and that she knows that she does it. He acknowledges how offensive it is and how it offends him. I thought Larray handled himself very well. He was very clear on why what she was doing was problematic and trying to call out that behavior. And Nikita basically blamed it on the whole conversation. Made my blood boil with her. I just couldn't believe what I was watching. Like, she literally just tried to say like, well, I'm always the villain anyway, so I might as well feed into it. The amount of influencers that say that shit is mind-blowing. They're like, well, people already think I'm problematic, so I might as well be racist on top of it. What kind of logic is that? She also tried to deny that she ever did that. She tried to claim that sometimes her skin tone was actually deeper, which was just not true. And even he said that's like not true. And then also her and Larray basically tried to blame it on her being part of the trans community, which I think that those are two separate issues. I am sure that Nikita gets a lot of really disgusting, unnecessary hate online for being trans. I don't doubt that, but I don't think it's an intersectional issue where people are harder on her for her racism simply because she's trans. I think people are hard on her for her racism because she's being a racist. Also, separate from that conversation, which honestly went nowhere, I don't think it changed anything about what Nikita was gonna do. It was honestly just her justifying her own actions for like 20 minutes straight. But Nikita then has this idea to glam certain members of the Hype House. I don't know. This was a weird subplot. I think the point of this subplot was to show that like men can be masculine in makeup, but like it just kind of fell flat and seemed more like an excuse for Nikita to just get to be the center of attention for an episode again. We also learned during these episodes that Alex grew up with an alcoholic mother. He meets up with his brother to play golf and it sort of opens up more about his childhood, how after his father passed, his mom got addicted to alcohol and became very abusive. Him and his brother really talk about that and discuss how it's impacted them as adults and sort of the struggles that they're going through now, trying to set healthy boundaries and healthy relationships with her. And again, I think these are wonderful things to talk about. I'm sure a lot of Alex's fans go through similar situations. And again, seeing somebody that you look up to and someone you love and knowing they went through something similar and they got out of it and they're okay, that's always going to be a positive thing. At the end of all of this dramatic weird saga of 2 episodes, Alex breaks his foot while skateboarding and is out of commission for a little bit. And that's the end of those 2 episodes. It feels like a fever dream. Now that I'm explaining this show episode by episode, everything I'm talking about literally feels like a fever dream. Like it was all just so disjointed and strange. And honestly, even now that I'm talking about it, there's all these little subplots that I'm like not talking about because they just didn't really make sense to this point of the, I guess I just don't know what the point of the show is. I don't know. Anyway, episode 6. Episode 6, they go on a like work trip, you could call it. They decide that they're going to Joshua Tree. Before they go to Joshua Tree, there's a few different drama things that happen. Larray has some people over at his house and doesn't invite other members of the Hype House, making them feel left out and isolated. Why all of them have to be at every gathering, I will never understand, but like regardless. And then Chase and a few of the people that live in his house were all sitting together and basically talking about the dynamics of the Hype House and talking about how they didn't really like Thomas. Interestingly, they were also talking about how they did not like Thomas's girlfriend, Mia. Now, Mia as a character on this show is someone I haven't brought up yet because she is getting an astronomical amount of hate online. And I understand why she's getting so much hate because she definitely on this show was not portrayed well. Like she comes across very mean and rude to people and always never else's business and kind of always shit talking people. And I agree with those criticisms. Like she was doing all of those things. She comes across kind of annoying in this show, but I also don't really want to add to the dog pile on her because she didn't really do anything wrong other than just being kind of annoying. Like she didn't do anything problematic or rude or terrible. Like she just stirred the pot all the time and she was kind of like snipping at people about things a lot. Like that was really her only thing. But they were talking in the hot tub about Mia and talking about how one of the guys had gotten in an altercation with her, which had led to him getting kicked out of the house. And it seems like just in general, again, I think the overlying theme of the whole show is that all of these people just don't like each other. It's so weird watching a reality TV show where like half of the people hate the other half of the people. It's a very weird thing. Even on most reality shows, I know there's dramas where like some people don't like each other and whatnot. Like those are always really interesting dramas. These aren't even really interesting dramas because we didn't see them build a relationship in the first place. Like the first show that comes to mind is Selling Sunset on Netflix, which is a show about realtors. And there's 2 characters, Mary and Christine, and they sort of hate each other now. Like now in season 4, they despise each other. They get in fights, they don't like each other. However, in season 1, they were like best friends. So we got to see their relationship. We got to see them being best friends. We got to see them really liking each other. And then they grew apart and that caused the drama. The show started with the Hype House and none of these people liked each other. So it's just like, why are you doing a show together then if you don't like each other? But anyway, they load up to go to Joshua Tree and Thomas says that this trip is supposed to serve as sort of like a bonding trip where they can all bond together. And then it's also supposed to serve as a trip for them to all make content at this very cool location. Basically like a bunch of little mini trailers in a circle, like a little community thing. It is a cool location, but the problem is, once again, is that he doesn't, at least on camera, he doesn't make it clear that the sole reason they're going is so they can make content. He makes it sound like it's just a friend trip. And it seems like based on the people, once they got there, most of them were under the impression that it was just a friend trip where they were all hanging out. So once they get to Joshua Tree, because there's been no expectation set that they're supposed to be filming content, none of them are, and then Thomas gets really upset, and so does Mia, his girlfriend, and they like flip out on a lot of people for not making content and not doing things they're supposed to be doing, even though most of them seemingly didn't know that's what they were supposed to be doing. During this episode, Larray, like, I don't know, where are the contracts? I just want to see the contracts. During this episode, Larray and Mia also get into like a mini little fight. It wasn't that big of a deal. It just seems so over dramatized. This is another point that Larray has come forward and says was taken out of context because Sienna was cut from the show. So I think that would explain why it seemed like a really awkward and weird confrontation between the two of them. It made like zero sense why they were even fighting in the first place. So I think with the added context of Sienna being there, that makes a lot more sense. I'm not even really gonna talk about that because it seems like that whole thing was just super edited poorly and it didn't make any sense in the first place. But they have that confrontation, and then Thomas also gets really down and really depressed. And this is when he starts talking about disbanding the Hype House and not doing it anymore because nobody is really on board with helping him do it anymore. Like none of the creators are invested anymore in the Hype House. Anyway, episode 7, that was literally all of episode 6. The show gets more boring the more you go into it. Like by the 5th episode, I was so just like bored and like not at all interested in what was happening because it was just like they all hate each other. Thomas doesn't like that people don't do work. Nobody really likes Thomas, and like all of them don't realize how lucky and blessed they are to be living the life that they're living. And like that's the point of the show. I could have just summed up the whole video for you in 3 minutes right there. Anyway, episode 7. They leave Joshua Tree. They were there for like 12 hours, by the way. I don't know how much content they were supposed to film at Joshua. They got there and it was already almost dark, and then they left first thing in the morning. So I don't know how much content they were supposed to get, but regardless, they left Joshua Tree, and on the way back, they did make a TikTok together. This is when you see Sienna in the show for like a brief second, which is how a lot of fans realized that she had been on these trips and had been actively cut out because of the controversy that she was involved in. So they do make a TikTok together. The TikTok does well, but Thomas is still not happy with the group. He wants to break it up, basically. This is when Thomas and Alex, when they get back from Joshua Tree, also have a conversation on the beach. They talk about sort of why they started the Hype House in the first place, how Thomas doesn't feel supported, how he feels like he has no help. Again, it is literally the same thing since episode 1. This is all Thomas talks about. The entire show is just like how unsupported he feels, and we don't see him actively trying to do anything to make those feelings better. So anyway, basically the bulk of episode 7, and actually this was probably my favorite part of the entire series, mostly because it just seemed so authentic and real, was Alex and Kover going to Alex's dad's grave. They talked about in the car ride there how nervous Alex was because he hadn't been there in a couple of years, kind of anticipating making a lot of jokes because that's just how he deals with his emotions. But once they get there, Alex is really overcome with emotion and he kind of just breaks down and is really upset. Talks a lot about his dad in the voiceover, about how his dad was sick when Alex was born and he knew that he was going to die eventually. So he had all these home movies, and Alex kind of makes the correlation between his dad leaving his mark in home videos to him making YouTube videos, which I thought was really symbolic and beautiful. And again, I can't stress enough, I think that him being so vulnerable and being willing to cry on camera and talk about the emotions he has about his dad passing and of how when that happened, it kind of turned his whole world upside down. I just think that's only a benefit. I think when we talk about traumas like that and are open about traumas like that, it's really beneficial, especially to young kids who might still be going through it, to know that even though those things are hard and there's still things you have to deal with, you do come out the other end on it. So I really commend him and Kover especially. I swear, Alex and Kover are like the best part of the show. They were the only two that were actually honest and had like real life stuff that they were talking about, and also talked about actual social media instead of just like petty bullshit and drama and fights. And then the episode ends, we go from that like very nice, touching, beautiful moment to Thomas basically being like, yeah, I'm gonna shut down the Hype House. And it's like, okay, season 2? Guess not. Like, I feel like there's no way Netflix knew that when they bought into this show that they would be documenting the downfall of the Hype House. I think that they fully signed on to this show to try to show how like cool and sick living in a content house was. And then they got there and they were like, oh fuck, all of these people hate each other and this is destined for failure. But anyway, episode 8, here we go. In the final episode, Chase has his very first in-person performance. It goes super well. He talks about how this really solidifies for him that he doesn't just want to be a TikToker. He also wants to be a singer and like a rock star. Nikita has this idea to go to prom to sort of relive the experience that she never got in high school. And now she wants to be able to go to prom as Nikita. Also, before the prom, there's somehow like 2 different parties that happen. These people do a lot of parties. There's a pool party where Chase, Alex, and Thomas finally get some resolution. And that after a season of not knowing where Chase stands, and Chase finally says that he is not a part of the Hype House anymore and he would like to just branch off and do music. And that's that on that. The weird thing about this was for the whole season, Thomas was seeming so angry and mad at Chase about everything. And he was like, I wish you would just tell me the truth. Like, then we could talk about it and like figure it out. And then the second Chase tells him, he like goes stone face, and it falls to Alex to be the one who has to be like, hey man, like, don't worry, we'll still be friends. And Thomas is like, oh yeah, friendship. Like, it's like, it wasn't even on his mind that friendship was an option besides business, but whatever. And then at the other party, they just have like a group conversation about how they're all a family. And that's it. Then the prom happens. Originally, Thomas says that he's going to be announcing the closure of the Hype House at the prom. But then once he gets to the prom, he realizes how amazing it is that they're all dancing together. And he decides he's going to keep giving the Hype House a try. And that's literally the ending, is the prom. Except for they do a jump to 6 months in the future where they show everybody moving out of the Hype House. There's no real context given. There's no real anything. It's just like half the people leave the Hype House. And like, that's it. So just like a really underwhelming ending and an underwhelming season in general. My final thoughts. Overall, this show is very blah. It's literally, it's not the worst reality show of like YouTubers or social media people that I've covered. It's certainly not the best. I don't think there's been a best yet, but it's definitely not the best. I think obviously because Netflix's budget and production value is much higher, the show aesthetically looked and seemed a lot better than a lot of the other reality shows we've seen before. Like, the production value was definitely there. I honestly just keep circling back to, after watching this show, what was the point? Like, what was the point of the show? And I don't think even anyone in the show or at Netflix can fully answer that for me. Like, I think the point in the beginning might have been to be about how dope it was to live in a content house, but they didn't really show that at all. Like, there weren't any like cool sides to any of this, except that they all lived in cool houses. Honestly, this show just made me dislike most of these people, except for like Alex and Cover and Vinny. I liked all 3 of those people, but this show just kind of made me dislike them and never in a million years want to live a life that is the life that they are living. Was it terrible? No. It wasn't good though. It lacked a lot of direction. I'm not sure what the point of making it was, and I don't think we learned anything inherently interesting about the social media world or the world of content houses through this show. I think we just learned about the lives of some really good people and some really shitty people. Overall, it just kind of sucked because this could have been a really cool opportunity for social media influencers to gain some legitimacy and maybe move forward in the future with shows. All that ended up happening was me just thinking about how spoiled and ungrateful most of the people on the show were for not being able to make a 15-second video with a Bang energy drink in it in order to have their rent in the mansion that they live in paid for. Yeah, and that's that on that. Anyway, this video was way too fucking long. I love you guys so much. I hope you like this video. Let me know if you watched the Hype House show down below. What are your thoughts? After hearing this analysis, what are your thoughts? And yeah, I love you guys so much. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, or just like, or just subscribe, or do neither. Honestly, just so happy you're watching me. Thank you so much for being here. My merch, my social media, and my podcast and vlog channel will be linked down below, along with my little social justice spotlight. You can click on that, find places to donate and give back. I love you guys so much, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!